All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with the official American Romanticism PowerPoint here. So American Romanticism lasted approximately from 1800 to 1860. It would have been a little bit before, basically any time after the Revolution, founding of the Constitution, is when we started looking at Romanticism, when the Revolution was truly over and the country had been established. So 1800 is a pretty good date for that. When we were talking about Romanticism in general yesterday, we weren't necessarily applying it to America because America got it a little bit later than Europe and Britain. They were preoccupied with other things. So, Romanticism in America was a reaction to the rationalism of the Puritans. The Puritans were straightforward, plain, and when the Industrial Revolution came, this was even more true. So once things became industrialized, rationalism, or rather, just straightforward thinking, would have been very common. This coincided with the Victorian era in London and in England larger. Did y'all learn about the Industrial Revolution in world history, I assume? So at that time, they valued straight answers, realistic thinking.
Can I have Jacob again? And Jacob, if you have your phone, bring your phone with you.
Can you go back?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Let me see what you have written down. Nothing.
See if I can move this out of our way a little bit.
Where's Ashley?
When you think about it, industrialism was definitely about building a nation, right? Things were becoming mechanized. A lot more things were able to be done by machine. The Puritans were such hardworking people, this would actually make their lives quite a bit easier. "18 hours in the field wasn't as important if you had some machines to help you." Next slide. So in Puritan America, it was still largely wild, right? We had villages surrounded by wilderness. Well, as we developed towards the Revolution, cities cropped up. New York City, Philadelphia, Boston. And with the development of these cities, we had slums and poverty, right? We started to see less communal societies and societies that were more divided based on their class. And so people started to get frustrated with rationalism because rationalism didn't help put food in their mouths. Romantics didn't necessarily help that, but they at least had a positive perspective. Capital R Romantics believed that imagination, emotion, spontaneity, feelings, and nature were more important than that rational thought. If you remember from yesterday, if Puritans believed God was the highest power and the revolutionaries believed liberty was the highest power, Romantics would have believed nature is the highest power. So it used to be, prior to Romanticism, that you wanted to move to the city and seek your fortune, right? And during the revolution, that's what people were doing. People were flocking to the cities because they were the hotbed of the revolution. Rationalists saw cities as a place to find success. You can make your own way in a city. But Romantics were frustrated with urban life. They saw it as a place of moral corruption, of poverty and death, where people didn't necessarily seem to care about their fellow man. So they wanted to get away from that. They believed you should get out to the country and that that was the place to be. There was also the idea that you should be alone as opposed to in the company of hundreds of other people. You could think better when you weren't surrounded by other voices. Which, hard to disagree with that. A lot of people still do that. They'll do a retreat in the mountains in Colorado or something similar today. That's a very capital R romantic idea that you just need to get away.
Can you go back with it?
Sure.
Austin?
Yes.
Hey, is Ashton Herman here?
Yeah.
No, he is not.
He's not. Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
We're not the end.
Are we supposed to come later?
Maybe he doesn't know he's released.
I can let him.
Oh, man. So much right. I don't even understand. I know.
Huh? Did they even play the Browns this year? So, I really don't think so.
Alrighty. Can we move on to the next slide? Okay. So we're going to talk about how the country and nature influenced the Romantics. They associated the country with independence, right? You could be yourself, free from influences in the country. They associated it with moral clarity, like there wasn't a bunch of other people or situations mucking up your sense of right and wrong. And purity, cleaner air, cleaner water, just a better place to be. The Gothic Romantics, for example, Edgar Allan Poe, they wrote about nature, but they wrote about it as a place where you would find the supernatural, right? Where there were ghosts and sort of terrifying occurrences, right? So it's not just that nature is beautiful and powerful, it's also that it is dark and overwhelming and occasionally terrifying. Washington Irving, another writer, saw the country as idyllic, or kind of the perfect place, and that it was an escape from people's everyday lives. In England, people would often buy an estate in the country and have a place to live in the city as well, a townhouse in the city, to kind of live this capital R romantic dream. All right. So if you were to meet a capital R romantic, here's what you would figure out about that person. Romantics value their feelings and their intuition over reason, meaning they trust their heart and their gut over their head. They trust their heart and their gut over their head. If a romantic had a hunch about something, they'd follow it. Romantics see things through rose-colored glasses, meaning they view life as the way they would like it to be if it were perfect, rather than how it really is. They saw everything as beautiful and wonderful and impressive, a very innocent, or you might say naive point of view. Rather than looking to religion and specifically sinfulness to figure out their moral sense, the romantics would look in nature. How can we figure out what is good based on beauty, right? As opposed to sin and punishment. And you'll notice here that nature is capitalized because nature is a force, right? A personality of sorts. Sorry, I didn't know that was the end of my slideshow. I thought I had two more. Guess it was pretty simple. So yeah, this was a very much a step away from organized religion in America, because organized religion so long had held a hold over how people made decisions and how they lived their lives. And people were frustrated with it because there was still poverty, there was still crime. And so they just tried to escape it, right? And that's what Romanticism is, trying to get away from all of those things and just escape them and go hang out with the daffodils. It's hard to blame them, even if they are wrong. All right. So I've got a little sheet that talks about whether something is romantic or not. I threw it into Wednesday. I probably shouldn't have done that. Basically, this will help you to look at a painting, a poem, whatever else, and figure out whether or not it is romantic. Hopefully I can get it back up on the board for you. So you think about the things that are typical of the capital R romantics. I mean, you can add to that too, like a sense of escape, a desire to forsake the city, right? But interest in the common man in childhood. So kind of like how an everyday working person is, which is interesting because the capital R romantics were by and large very well educated people, like they had higher education. They were highly intelligent and often came from very wealthy families. So it was easy for them to say, wow, these farmers are so wonderful because they work with the earth. They're so simple and pure. To be fair, the romantics had never done a hard day's work in their life. right? So them idealizing the farmer was more about the idea of farming. You probably wouldn't catch a romantic actually doing the work on a farm. They just like the idea of it. So interest in the common man in childhood, senses, feelings, and emotions, awe of nature, celebration of the individual, and the importance of imagination. So I've got 2 paintings in Schoology, if I can find them. The Voyage of Life by Cole Thomas. Here it is. And The Lady of Shalott. I actually have The Lady of Shalott up on my wall because are you even really an English teacher if you don't have The Lady of Shalott somewhere in the room? I don't think so. So what we're going to do with the rest of the time is look at these and talk about in what ways are they capital R romantic. I'm going to divide us up here and see what we do. So that'll be the end of the lecture and notes for now. Do you have any questions? Okay, I'll leave us to it.